that's good, that's fine with us.
Yeah, and I kind of looked at some of that too, and I'm like, it's just one of those things, I'm not sure I'm gonna give them too much of a hard time about that. Yeah, I can paint this because it's easier for me. It's just a lot of flat roof. But I don't know if I have the great
Mics are hot.
elevations.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will call the Tuesday, August 13th meeting of the Smithfield Planning Commission to order. If you would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Claire, you have a director's report for us?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. We do not have any updates at this time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the planning commissioners have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, you got off easy. Next on the agenda, upcoming meetings and activities. Next Tuesday, we have the Board of Historic and Architectural Review at 6:30. Board of Zoning Appeals meeting at 7:30 has been canceled for next Tuesday. Monday, the 26th, Town Council has committee meetings. Tuesday, September 3rd is Town Council regular meeting. And Tuesday, September 10th will be our next Planning Commission meeting. Item 3, public comments. Public is invited to speak to Planning Commission on any matters except scheduled public hearings. And they want me to use the mic. Okay. I thought it was loud. All right, comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Any required responses from the town will be provided in writing following the meeting. Do we have anyone signed up? Anyone here wish to speak, feel compelled? We'd love to hear from you, really, we would. Okay. Any planning commission comments? That's our next item. Nobody feels moved to, okay, that item's closed. Item number 5 is a public hearing, special use permit, 803 South Church Street. Tim Ryan is the applicant. Ms. Claire, do you have a staff report on that, please?
Yes, thank you. The staff report details the history of this project through the special use permits, site plan amendments, comprehensive plan amendments, and official zoning maps amendments. The applicant is now seeking a planning commission waiver and a special use permit. This would be to allow the gravel parking lot. Originally, the applicant did indicate that they would pave the parking lot by June of 2022 and connect to the town's water system by June of 2022. The applicant is now seeking a waiver and an SUP in order to keep the gravel parking lot as gravel and not paved. Town staff do recommend that a favorable recommendation to Town Council for the approval of the gravel parking areas and the vehicle movement areas would be on the condition that the applicants do connect to the town's water system within 30 days of Town Council approval, if Town Council does approve this special use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clary. Again, this is a public hearing item, so I will open the public hearing. Do we have anyone set to speak on this? Okay, Mr. Ryan, as the applicant, I understand you would wish to speak on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Ryan, 11220 Shelter Cove, Smithfield, Virginia. So this evening, we'd like to actually talk about two things. A waiver for not only the parking lot that we have, but also so we don't have to hook up to town water. I'd like to frame my comments in two parts. One is to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are, and then the other is to talk about what the impacts are on us as a small business. So again, you can see the history in the staff report that was done here, but a little bit of background is my business partners, Derek Joyner and Nick Hess, went through the process of getting rezoned to even be able to start a restaurant in that business. Got up to the point of approval for that, and Mr. Settle, Ms. Clary's predecessor, pretty much told them, if you don't agree to these two things, paving the parking lot and hooking to town water, you will not get approved. Again, a bureaucratic gun to the head is the way I would frame it. They said yes. I wasn't on the team yet, but nonetheless said yes and moved forward with it. We spent another year and about $100,000 taking a very old building, no parking lot but dirt and grass, and converting it into something that is now a usable and viable business. Again, we get to the spring of 2021, just before we open, asked the town we had, I think, 6 or 7 special use permits from front yard parking and all sorts of things. After going through a lot of bureaucratic hoops, we asked, the town said, in order for us to say yes, you again have to pave your parking lot and hook the town water. Well, what are we going to say at that point but yes? And so we said, okay, well, maybe by 2022, we'll have enough money to do this, not really understanding what it was going to cost. So we looked at the parking lot. They said it's going to be about $9,000. It's not gravel. It is asphalt millings, which is a different thing, non-dust raising, et cetera. And we spent about $5,000 or $6,000 grading and pavement with asphalt millings. So we thought that would do. The water hookup we thought was going to cost at most $5,000 or $6,000 because we believed that the town would bring the water across the street and all we'd have to do is pay for a meter and then plumb it into our building. That's not the number that I got from the town later on. So again, we're thinking a little bit different in terms of what we're expecting monetarily, but we also had to say yes or we would have never gotten opened. So that's kind of gets us to where we are right now. Let me back up one thing. In March, I got a letter from the town signed by Ms. Clary that said you still have to hook up to the water, and that, oh, by the way, if you do it quick, you have 9 days, you can use a town contractor, but it'll cost you $31,300 and some change dollars just for water hookup, okay? So that's where we are, and we had 30 days to do it once again, or we were going to face legal action and have our business license taken away. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Well, let me, take you down a little bit of a road of business math here for just a second. In a good restaurant, and some restaurateurs in this building, 10% profit margin is what you shoot for. 30% cost of labor, 30% cost of goods, 30% operational cost, and 10% cost of profit margin. Well, with a $31,000 plus ticket for doing the water, and potentially, again, unless we're waived otherwise, another $9,000 or so to pave the parking lot. That's $40,000 that you're asking us to come up with. Yeah, it's been a couple years. Now think about that. That's 10% of $400,000 in revenue. That's not a small sum for a business that did $609,000 total in revenue last year, and the town knows that because we paid them $36,000 in meals tax. So if you're asking, $400,000 of revenue before that we are giving up the profit on to do this water hookup and or the parking lot, before we even, as owners, now again, we've worked at this for 4 years without taking a penny out of the company. So we're working, employing people, paying the town meals tax. We paid the town almost $100,000 in meals tax since we opened, and we've paid ourselves $0. So when you see us there on holidays, nights, and weekends, we're working for free, so that we can get to the point where we've paid off all our debt and we can actually be profitable. Having a paid parking lot and hooking town water doesn't make us any more profitable. So again, that $40,000 comes out of our personal pocket. We don't have $40,000 laying around as a business, so I have to go say, hey, I'm going to take out a personal loan. We're going to put the money in our checking account, and we're going to go do these things, me and my other partners. That conversation doesn't go real well at the house. We say, hey, we're not going on vacation this year. We're going to pay for water hookup that we don't even need. And that's kind of brings me to the end here, is that there is no business value at all for us. There will never be any more profit. It doesn't make our water any better. It doesn't make our beer any better. It doesn't make our parking lot any bigger. It doesn't make our air conditioner work any better. It doesn't give us any more seating on the inside, where I could use that $40,000 maybe to enclose the back porch and put air conditioning in it. An air conditioner will work for those who've been in our business recently. But it has absolutely no business value and never will have. So it's just lost money. I mean, I can understand paying meals tax, and the police comes and runs off our neighbor every once in a while, but the $40,000 to hook up to town water doesn't get me anything. So kind of the end here is that the building was there for 91 years with 25 businesses before we opened, and yet we're the ones who get you must pave your parking lot, where it had been red clay literally before, and you must hook to town water. Neither of those two things make us a better business at all. So why are we now, with the kind of the bureaucratic gun to our head, having to do those things, and it brings us nothing? In fact, it would put us out of business if we get to that point. I mean, the bridge is bad enough. That's 15 to 18% off of our revenue this year. And I've talked to the town about this, several months ago. But we get nothing out of it. And so we asked the town waive both the requirement to pave the parking lot and the requirement to hook the town water. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr.
Subject to
Brown.
your questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Oh, we have to close the public hearing, right? Anyone else wish to speak on this item, the public hearing item?
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing is closed. Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Legas, I have a couple.
Mr. Beck?
Mr. Ryan? You're the brewmaster
Yes.
in the group, correct, right?
Among others.
And so I know enough about beer that I'm not going to ever make beer. But when you make beer, your water has certain balances and chemical composition that affects the flavor of your beer, correct?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
And the water that you're taking from a well now is different than town water, correct?
It is.
So it would alter your recipes on your beer, you would have to go back.
It would.
Is that a big deal?
It is a big deal if you don't, I mean, I can overcome it. Obviously, I built the recipes for the water for each beer we make. There's a different water recipe, and I built it based upon the water that we have. Obviously, if I got to it once, I can get to it again. But it's not a simple math problem. So it is a problem that's solvable. Any brewer's done it, but it's not a right away kind of thing. So it would take some experimentation. I mean, I've got calculations that I can figure out, how much calcium or whatever, but it is a solvable problem, but not one that what else are we going to solve, right? So
Yeah.
that is an issue.
The second question I have for you is, staff is recommending that we give you the special use permit and the waiver for the parking. But they've also asked that we condition it with the connection to the water system. If that were to be the route that this planning commission went, where would your business stand? Would you guys be in business? Would you be out of business?
Well, short of us, again, taking out personal loans, because we don't have the money in the business. I mean, as I've said, the bridge closure, 10% profit margin, and it's taken 15 or more percent off of our revenue for the year. So we would have to take personal loans out to do that, if we chose to do that. I'm not sure at this point that we would choose to do that. So that would be something that again, we'd have to generate $400,000 more in revenue, or $300 if we're just doing the water hookup, in order just to break even from that. And that's certainly going to happen in 30 days. It might not happen in 300 days. So it would definitely make us think twice about staying open, because it's, I'm not working for another year for free.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's what I asked.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown?
for Director Clary. We had an issue a couple of years ago about hooking up the town water with, I think it was the farm place over on West Main Street. I'm trying to remember the result of that. What did we do with that?
They had requested a well in order to mix their concrete.
Right.
This was at the Farmer's Service. So the difference here is that it's a commercial establishment that is creating the concrete. In this particular situation, we don't have a water meter hooked up to that commercial business, so they are not paying HRSD. They are paying the minimum amount because we can't meter the amount of water that they're actually using, that's actually flowing into HRSD's system that they are treating. They are using the water, and the water is not dissolving, turning into any other substance. It's actually flowing through the system, which is another reason why we need them to connect to town water, because they are a commercial establishment that is using, they need to have a two-inch water connection per our design standards, and it needs to be metered in order for us to adequately account for that, and they need to adequately pay HRSD for that treatment of that water.
Let me ask you a question with that. I own Surrey Seafood. We're on a well because there is no city-provided water. But recently, HRSD has picked us up. We pay and are metered to HRSD. I don't know how, but we are, and my bill varies on the HRSD side depending on how much water we're putting back into the system. Is there not a mechanism where we could do this in this situation to get them on HRSD?
It's my understanding that they're paying the minimum amount, that it's not being metered. I can reach out to HRSD and see if I can find out some more information on their end.
I would have to think that there's
You could
some
be-
sort of mechanism.
Or- I think y'all need some history. A lot of you don't even know how this happened, do you?
No.
Okay. There is on the corner of where the tap house is located, it was God, I can't remember the name of the man, but there's a family who split that all up. And it's all,
Phelps.
huh?
It's the Phelps family.
The Phelps family, that's right. And there's 3 houses and the restaurant, or is it 4 houses?
There's 4.
There are 4 houses and a restaurant that are all served by a well, which has been there. It predates annexation, so it's been there before the town ever annexed that part of the town. So it's just been there, and the town has never extended water lines there because there was no need, and so that's how it's happened. It's just existed, and there's never really been an issue. The HRSD issue is a problem because they're required to, I mean, they're putting effluent into the system, and they need to pay for it to be treated. The water issue, it's extremely expensive because it's on the other side of the road. The water main is on the south side or west side of South Church Street, and you have to jack and bore underneath the highway in order to bring, and that's only to serve them.
Yeah.
The homes are still gonna be on the well. So this doesn't solve that problem at all. It's just the solution or the cost is gonna be purely associated with the restaurant. To address Mr. Pack's issue, and I guess this is a question for for Tim Ryan, would it be possible to install a meter on the line going to your restaurant to determine the volume of water? I would think, where's the?
Talking about from the well.
Yeah, from the well, between the well and your restaurant, obviously there would be a place where you can install a meter.
Certainly, yes.
According to our design standards, we do require commercial establishments to have a 2-inch water connection to the town's water service.
Well, they have to pay for a 2-inch, they don't have to put in a 2-inch.
Correct. They can push it down to whatever size they need, but their service line needs to
Right.
be 2 inches.
Right. They have to bring the 2-inch line, but they don't have to pay for a 2-inch meter.
Correct. They can push it down to
Right.
whatever size
They
they
have to
need.
if they bring the water line from across the street, they have to bring a 2-inch line.
Yes.
But they can push it down, they don't need a 2-inch line, because they don't need fire protection, they don't need any of that stuff. They can push it down to a smaller meter, because the differential in the water tap fee is dramatically different.
Yes.
So I'm just telling you the story because it isn't written anywhere, it's just how things happen.
If I could offer a comment about the well in the community that's there. So the Phelps family owned that. They owned what was a gas station back in 1929. I also own 104 Jordan as an individual with my other company. And so 104 Jordan is on the same well. It was owned by the Phelps family as well. And I can tell you that the HRSD charges you not the least, but just an exorbitant amount relative to, I'm paying like $150 a month for sewer, because again, it's not metered. I get the water from the exact same well as the tap house does it with 104 Jordan. And it's $150 a month for HRSD because they don't know, and they charge you a lot. Again, I have to go look see what the tap house pays. But I own two other buildings in town that are on HRSD, and it's maybe $30 a month. It's not nowhere near. So HRSD is they're hedging their bets and charging, at least in my case, they're charging a lot more than I would pay if they knew exactly what water I used in 104 Jordan, which is Jordan and Lumar corner right there. So again, I don't know how they calculate all that. I just know that it's a lot more than I pay anywhere else in town because they can't, they don't know how much water we use. So if that's any help at all.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that the well's been there for how long, 98 years?
The building's been there for 95 years.
I don't know how
assume
long
it's
the well's been, it's been there
A long time.
it predates annexation.
Okay. All right, so is it a regular kind of well with a pump, or is it a bored well?
Well, it was a bored well, and so the Phelps family, Bill and Phyllis William and Phyllis Phelps, who are
Right.
related to the original owners of the land, Georgie, maintain that well. Each of the landowners, property owners to include Red Point, and then me on another case, pay them every month for that. But at Red Point, I have to do water tests every month that I do, with the,
That's my
with the
next
state.
question. How often?
And so, yeah, every month have to do that, and, and then the whole system gets inspected once a year. So we have to, because of the restaurant and brewery side of it, we have to do the water test, which I send off through the health department every month.
Right.
So that's not required for the homeowners, but I have to do it for the
Well, and when you brought up, Mr. Bryan, about, thank you, Farmer Service ACE, which is ACE now, for the concrete, that's not being consumed, so that's not as much, for me, that's not as much of a heartache as the, people consuming out of a bored well, but you are having it tested, which
Yes.
makes me feel better.
Well-
It's the same water everybody else drinks, it just doesn't have, it doesn't go through the treatment plant. It doesn't go, and before
'Cause it's groundwater.
before the EO plant, we were all drinking the same thing, and then the federal government said we couldn't do that anymore.
Right.
So now all of our water, they take everything out of it. and
Right.
We have, it has absolutely nothing in it, and we add stuff back through the reverse osmosis plant.
Look, Director Clary, the farm service, the building itself, does it link to the town water?
Yeah.
I believe so. It was just for
It just-
the
It was just for the concrete.
mixing
Mr. Brown,
aspect
Okay.
of it.
All they wanted, that well was just, they wanted water for industrial purposes. That's why they wanted that well. It didn't have
Okay.
anything to do with the drinking water to the building, the service to farmer service, none of that.
Okay,
Because they already had service.
okay.
Yeah,
Then, next question. The water line is on the opposite side of the street. The town isn't responsible for running that to the property line?
No, that would be the responsibility of the commercial development.
Going to make a comment.
Dr. Pope, please.
I apologize in advance. Anything that I say is incorrect, please correct me. But I was on the planning commission when this came before us several years ago. When they proposed to put this tap house in this building, they knew they had a non-compliant building. And they knew that they were going to have to run a water line. And they knew that they were going to have to pave the parking. That was all stipulations in the approval at the beginning. Since this property has come into existence, there's been some extenuating circumstances with the addition on the deck in the back that's had to require some special use permits and after the fact approvals. The health department required them to put in a refrigerating unit that was covered by roof line, which allowed for more after the fact approvals and encroachment upon the easements of the lot. So there's been a lot of concessions on this property that some they knew about, some they didn't know about. But in the beginning of all of this, they knew that they had certain parameters to meet. We're asking them to meet them. And now they don't want to meet them, even though they knew this was part of the business plan prior to starting the business. So that's the devil's advocate in this. They knew that this was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to be $30,000 tap fee, but these were things that they agreed upon. The businesses that have been there over the years have never changed the building. And then all of a sudden we have a substantial change to building that now requires them to bring them up to code for many reasons, including probably the ECO guidelines, town water guidelines, or pavement parking lots. And now we're looking at this property to say, okay, we understand you're an existing business. Had you done this before you opened, we wouldn't be sitting here. Now you're asking us to do this 3 years later. What are we going to do as we move down Church Street and continue to allow other businesses to do this? So my argument is y'all had agreed to this, and so I have a little bit of trouble with that. I don't want you spending $30,000 on water. I think that's ridiculous. I can't control the price, and I don't know how to help rectify that situation for you. But this was the agreement upon the approval of this back in the day when it first came before us. And we've been granting a special use permit waiver for them not to hook up to the town prior to this. And I don't know where we are with that, but we have always allowed that just because of the added expense and trying not to run the business out of business. But these is what we agreed to. I mean, this is, I don't think this would be any different if Tractor Supply said they're going to add that addition on, and it looks like they're getting ready to get started, at least moving equipment in, and then all of a sudden they decide they want to change something. They got to come back before us. I don't know. This was the original agreement.
Does anyone on that side of the street have town water as it moves toward Battery Park Road? Is there town water on that side?
There are other, sorry, there are other connections. However, in this particular, in order to tap the main, the main is located on the opposite
Okay,
side
and
of the
that's
tap
the
house.
reason they have to
Because
do
it
that.
is a commercial structure, our design standards require a 2-inch service
Right.
line, so they would need to install that 2-inch service line.
The animal hospital has water, town water, right next to us, and we asked early on, thought we might be able to tap into that, and I don't remember why we couldn't, or maybe they wouldn't let us, I don't know, but they do have, even though they were on the original Phelps property, they do have town water, as I understand it anyway. But we did discuss with the town of tapping into that to save some of that expense,
Right,
but that, for
right.
whatever reason, couldn't work.
But because of the design standards, that would not meet those design standards. And, yeah, I wasn't on the planning commission when you all first came to the commission about your property and your business. But my only analogy is, okay, you can have a cookie before dinner, but you've got to do your homework. This is kind of what y'all been told. And now homework wasn't done and you want to extend it, you want another cookie. The gravel parking lot or the milled parking lot,
Asphalt millings, yes.
yeah, as long as it's kept graded and smooth, I don't have a problem with that. In fact, the perviousness of the parking lot is a good thing. But you're a business with people consuming the well water that you do test, but it doesn't meet the design standards for a restaurant in town or within our purview.
Mr. Ryan, back to the parking, you all don't have any problems with flooding there
No.
on your parking? It's
No, we're
been
on top
very
of it.
well maintained
Yeah,
every time
it's,
that I've
it's
been
right.
there?
And again, the asphalt millings packs like asphalt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
I haven't seen
there's
any
not-
issues with that.
no, it
Okay.
doesn't move around when you
Yeah.
drive on it. In fact, once you drive on it, it packs it down just like
Yeah.
asphalt.
So
And
I
we
would-
thought that that would be sufficient because it is, even though you think it'd be, porous, it's not. Water
Oh,
sheds
it's
off
not,
it.
it's not.
It's just like
No,
asphalt.
and
It packs
Oh,
down.
then, okay. That's
DEQ
different.
doesn't even consider gravel to be pervious, they consider it impervious surface.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
For stormwater purposes. Yeah.
okay.
I have another question,
Mr. Brown?
indirectly, thank you. Anyone can answer this question. When do we expect the Cypress Creek Bridge construction to be completed?
Mr. Pack might be best able to answer that.
December
Very best scenario would be July of '25, more likely between Thanksgiving and Christmas of '25.
Next year?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add additional comment. You know, what Dr. Pope, I was on the planning commission when we went through this, and what Dr. Pope said is, I mean, there's not a doubt about it. That's exactly what the facts were, and I understand his point. And I understand his point well, and I voted in favor of the SUPs being approved at that time. But I feel a little bit differently moving forward on this. And the reason being is that we have a nice restaurant on the other side of town that is not in the historic district, that does not have very many small restaurants. Now, once you get out of the shopping center district, there are some, and there's Anna's there as well. But I like to see restaurants in town. I think it's good for the town. I think it's good for our people. And I feel like we're putting in a unnecessary burden on a business. I try and be small business friendly, particularly. The town does collect significant revenues from that, but more importantly, it's a place for town people, particularly on that side of the bridge, when maybe you don't want to have to drive around to have a place to stop and get a good meal and meet good people. And I think that's important in a town. And the thought that we could potentially put a business out of business by not allowing reasonable accommodation for a well doesn't sit good with me. And I don't care if it's Mr. Ryan's business or somebody else's. I always try and think about what is best for our community and what these businesses provide for us. I think that business provides a real benefit to the town. I know that we try and be very uniform and very fair, but I think when we design our rules and regulations, we always leave that what if spot in them. What if this scenario that we haven't considered comes up? And this is certainly one that I think when we said, well, you have to connect to town water, We don't say, well, what if we had let you sit there for 4 years on a well and do just fine, and now we're requiring you to put out a significant capital outlay. I don't think we consider that when we make our design standards. And I think there's always should be rooms for reasonable exception applied fairly and earnestly. I mean, the business provides a lot to the community. It's a gathering spot, it's a social accommodation, it's a place for people to eat. A lot of people eat out. A lot of people eat out way more than they did 30 years ago. And, you know, families to go down there and eat. I enjoy the restaurant. It's at the end of my street. It's really nice. You know, I can eat for free on the other side of the bridge, but I have to drive all the way back around to get home. And it's kind of nice to be able to just go down here. And then also if the server isn't getting to the table quick enough. Yeah, I have. I don't have to worry about their service issues because they're not really my problem. But that aside, reasonable accommodation for small business is important to me. It's something that I ran on 12 years ago, something I've tried to bring throughout my service to the town. I really think that we need to look at reasonable accommodation. You know, if Virginia Department of Health says the well water is good enough and they test it every month, I'm okay with that. I didn't realize you guys had to test every month, so it's good to hear that, you know, the public is being looked out for. The business does not cause a nuisance. I believe they have one neighbor that's not crazy about it, but generally, as a rule, the business is not a nuisance. There are not issues there. The police department hasn't brought it to our attention about wild parties. They close early, so it's not a late night spot with music issues or anything like that. And when you have businesses that bring those to the town, it's my opinion that we need to look out for them perhaps a little bit differently than we would. That's my 2 cents.
I will add that when we have spoken to the applicants, they indicated that they had received a price point of upwards of $60,000 for the connection, which is why we reached out to our contractor to provide a quote for them, which did come in at about half that at the $31,000.
Yeah, I understand Dr. Pope's position. I mean, that was the terms of the agreement at the time that we issued the use permit. But I agree with Mr. Pack. I mean, we want to be business friendly, and they do provide a great option, a great service to the community, and they've been nothing but great corporate citizens. I enjoy the place as well, and you know, I'd like to see us make some accommodations if we could. But is there any further discussion on this item, Mr. Brown?
May I make a suggestion? I'm pretty much in line with Dr. Pope. The applicant mentioned the stress that the bridge construction is putting on their business. And we've given them relief, in a sense, extending the requirement to connect to the town water. With the construction said to be completed sometime 2025, suggestion is we give them another 2-year waiver in order for the bridge to be completed. Perhaps their clientele base will increase and help them with their profit margins and such. And to offer that relief, it's another 2-year extension for hooking up to the town water. The parking lot I got no problem with. But again, to pretty much back the ordinance that we have, I could go along with that. Accepting the town recommendation, parking lot is okay, but connecting to the town within another 2 years, that's something I would like to toss around.
Mr. Bryan, to waive the parking lot
I'm
requirements?
putting it out there as, you know, further discussion for the commission.
Okay.
Well, my discussion item then would be, okay, they know this is coming in 2 years. They sell their business to somebody else. Who's going to pay? How long are we going to allow them to pass the buck before somebody's going to say, this building's got to be brought up to code? You know, that's the issue. You know, they sell it to another restaurateur and say, hey, we've had our run, we've enjoyed it, we're out. Sell it to somebody else. When are we going to look at them? It's going to create a financial hardship for everybody involved, no matter when it's done.
If it's going to be something, it's
It's gonna
And,
cost
and,
a lot of
and I'm
money.
not going to say we wouldn't have voted for this 3 years ago, but this was part of the whole operation of the deal of, hey, this is what needs to happen to make this property in compliance at the time. And so therefore, that was part of the deal to allow all of this extra expansion to go on a non-conforming lot. And that part of it is just the whole picture of it all, in that. Suppose we look at the church later in the agenda and say, oh, you can hook up to a well, and then we don't bring them on. Now, that's new construction, completely different, but that's the issue. It's the principle of the matter. I'm not interested in them spending $40 or $60 or $70,000 bringing their building up to compliance, but it's the principle of the matter. What happens if I go buy the house across the street from Supreme and decide to open up a doctor's office, another satellite office? When are you going to make me pave the parking lot? When are you going to make me upgrade my water line? When are you going to make me come into full compliance with the ECO? We've discussed this in many meetings in the past. When is the trigger going to say you've got to be full compliance? And we don't have a trigger. We do a touchy-feely thing, and that gets us into trouble, or it's going to lead us into trouble. And that's my issue with this. It's not about putting them out of business. It's not about making them spend more money. But we're going to be looking at this issue as development continues. We want commercial development. We don't want housing development. We need commercial and industrial and other types of development. That's the kind of development we really need. But when are we going to put our foot down to say, you've got to come into full compliance with what the ordinances are? That's the issue for me tonight, not about them personally of what's going on at their business. But this is going to be an issue down the line as more and more businesses want to come in and take over those smaller homes, either consolidate lots or do whatever they do and do that. We may be on that verge. That might be our answer in the next 3 to 5 years. And if we're looking at Church Street expansion and all of that stuff, all of this is going to be coming to the forefront. And so that's the issue for me, is this is what it was. And I don't mind delaying it 2 years if they're going to be in agreement with it. But if they sell the business, that new business owner then needs to come into compliance within 2 years if something happens. And I don't know what kind of teeth we have to make sure that happens if something's sold or changed hands.
Well, the conditions are already in place. They're supposed to pave and they're supposed to connect the water. That's already in place. The interesting thing about, I'm reading the application tonight, and they've only applied for a waiver with respect to the parking lot. And the recommendation about the water is a staff recommendation. He didn't ask for a waiver on the connection, because that's not part of your application. It's part of your presentation and what you're asking for. And I guess in response to the town staff's recommendation, because they're saying do it in 30 days.
When I submitted the paperwork and corresponded with Ms. Clary about it, my understanding was, I asked, okay, which ordinances do I need to put in there to do both? And I thought when I submitted the special use permit application, that on one document I was applying for waivers for both. And then I saw the staff report there, and it looked like the water connection part was left off, or at least it's secondary. So in my mind, we're applying for a waiver for both in one shot.
But I don't think this.
In this application, we just have a waiver of the ECO for the gravel and then a special use permit to utilize the gravel as a waiver of parking and loading only.
So it really, this doesn't really, he's not technically asked for a waiver on the water, but that's part of staff's recommendation in support of his current application. I'm not saying you can't do what you want to do. I'm just saying you need to understand what's really before the planning commission.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
I'll make the motion that we accept staff recommendation with the condition the applicant is given another 2 years to come in compliance with the water connection.
The motion is a second.
I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Before that. Can you not only live with it if we extend hooking up for 2 years, but can you plan for it? and actually accomplish it?
Both good questions. So, again, back to the, yes, we could plan for it. We can plan for it. I can't plan for how much more the bridge is gonna, take us to the mat,
Sure.
et cetera. That's been a big thing. One, I didn't plan for 31,000 versus 5 or 6, which we thought
Well,
initially.
you don't know what you don't
So-
know. That's
So,
what-
could
yeah.
we shave off whatever? I mean, back to my point, it's an absolute horrible business. There's absolutely no return on investment for this for us. So I object to that to begin with, but yes, we did agree to it. Actually, it was before I came on the team. So yes, we can plan for it. If that's, again, if that's what we have to do to stay open, then again, we have no choice but to say yes and plan for it. And then, in 2 years, if we can make it, we can make it. If not, if we don't have $40,000 sitting around, then we'll just have to, bite the bullet and go out of business or whatever, sell the business. I don't know.
But in another 2 years, during that time, you can be looking for other quotes, correct?
We certainly would, but no matter what, we've asked around maybe 20,000, but that's still a lot. I mean, it's $200,000 worth of revenue you'd have to do just to pay that back. And that's 200,000 of revenue that, we've got to manage through. That's $20,000 that we as owners don't have to fix the air conditioning or whatever. Yes, if you said, just like we did 2 times previous, if you said, put a gun to our head and said, this is the only way you're going to move forward, then we have to say yes. Just the same way, we did 2 other times prior to this. We have much better clarity on what it's going to cost at this point. But, if the choice today is say yes and push the ball down the road for 2 years and hope that we can generate enough revenue to pay it as much as we don't want to, then that's the only choice I have. Because if I say no, then I got 30 days to come up with $30,000 to town water, and that I know isn't going to happen. So it's either push it down the road 2 years or go out of business, basically.
Well, I'll say I was not on the planning commission when it came through the first time, but I did live across the street as you were developing and as it was coming online, and having done business plans for restaurants and breweries in the past, with the size of the space, I didn't understand how the business model was going to work to get enough revenue from that building to do what I was hearing was going to take to bring it up to code. So I'm with Dr. Pope here on the original business plan included it. Businesses come and businesses go because of not having good business plans. It was part of what's supposed to be done. I'd like to see it done, but again, I'm with the rest of you as well, which is I'm happy to see a business that is there succeeding. Same thing. I enjoy the restaurant. It's good. Food's good. Service has been good. And same thing, all for small business. And actually was part of a restaurant where a 6-month road project in front of a restaurant shut us down after that project went for 2.5 years. So I think the request for extension until hopefully the bridge is done, and you can see what your revenue stream looks like and if it increases enough to do it. But one of the other questions I was going to ask was, the business does seem to be thriving. How long until you outgrow that building and try to move somewhere anyway?
We were too big for the building to start with, for all the reasons that
Exactly.
you described, and we knew that going in, and knew that we'd have to do some things like the back deck, the additions, and these other things in order to be able to generate enough revenue to even make it have a chance of being profitable. At the end of the day, no matter what we do, maybe $750,000 in revenue a year is about all you're going to squeeze out of that building. And we knew that going in because it's, again, for each of the 3 of us to say, okay, well, if I can work and do those things and, have a place that's nice, people like it, et cetera, we can employ some folks. And we make 20 grand each out of it, with the side hustle. Okay, fine. I got other businesses I can lean on. But that isn't the case at this point because of, again, grew a lot going into last year. I mean, the town's got the records because we paid the tax. But not nearly that this year. So I don't know. I don't know how much it can work. It just, right now is very, very thin just because of, there's a critical mass you got to get to, and it's probably about $400,000 before you make any profit at all. And that's about what you're asking us to give all the profit from anyway in this size of a bogey. Yes, we did say we were going to do it. And again, it was because if we didn't say yes, we wouldn't even be there, right? and we wouldn't continue to do it, so.
Which may have been the best decision, because you could have found a place that was the right size and the right place to go do
Well,
it
it's-
rather
yeah,
than
that's- yeah.
shoving it,
Yeah, well,
shoving
I
it into
had all
that
those
small
same
building.
concerns. Problem is, that there aren't any
Yep.
other places in town to do it, so, and we wanted to be close to town for all the reasons that, you know, everybody's
Understood.
described, so. That was the best thing going at the time, not perfect, but good enough, you know,
Yeah.
so.
But we're
Okay.
also not holding you hostage to that yes decision. Y'all proposed that this is what we were going to do, and we agreed upon it. It wasn't like we gave you an ultimatum of you got to hook up to the water and pave it, or you're not getting approved. Y'all came to us with the original business plan of, this is what we're doing, how do you like it? And we approved it.
Because John Settle directly told us if we did not go with that hat in hand, with those two items in hand, we would not get approved. So the wrangling that it took to get past that particular individual in multiple different times, I'll leave it at that. But, yeah, we would not have ever even gotten to, we would have never, you all would have never said yes had we not said we're gonna do those two things. And we would have never opened a business at all. And we would have never generated, we've done almost 100,000 in meals tax since we've been open. So that would have been zero. So, I mean, we're employing folks and we're working for free. So I don't know how much harder we can work at this to do something that's good for the town. It's certainly not good for us. I mean, personally, we want to get to some point where we can, hey, let's actually make money on this thing as a business owner. It's just been a big hobby for 4 years, and not, for a lot of reasons, challenges with the space and all that sort of thing. But yes, we did say yes, and that's the reason why I started with that, saying why we did. And I understand you all's position. I mean, obviously you got to set standards and you got to enforce those standards and those sorts of things. I'm just telling you the reality of where we are as a business, why we got to where we are, and that no matter what we do, that will never increase our revenue a penny. It's just a completely lost cost that other people who just happen to fall in on a building that's already hooked up to town water don't have to deal with. We knew that. I guess we knew that. We just didn't know how much it was going to cost. A lot of things you didn't know that we know now, but that's where we are. So, and again, I understand what you all are faced with in terms of, you've got rules and you want to enforce those and have something that's repeatable, because somebody else is going to come in here and say, well, Red Point, you let them do this, or Farmer Service, you let them do that. I understand that, but it doesn't make our situation any easier. So,
One more point, though, is I don't necessarily agree with you. No, I don't think it gives you 1 ounce of 1 penny more in profit, but I do think you get value out of it. And the fact that we enforce our ECO guidelines and allow pavement and these types of upgrades is because it makes your business more profitable to you ultimately when you sell it. I think by adhering to our guidelines and making the next business confer and pave and hook up to town water and do all of that keeps your investment legitimate. And you should hopefully get dollar for dollar out of it. You're not going to increase your profits on a working day-to-day basis, but that we have consistency across our town. We maintain a value in our property, and our property values and our assessments and all of the stuff that goes into that is maintained across all businesses. So I think it's important that we adhere to a consistent guideline, because you paving yours helps my business and helps Mr. Hughes's and helps Hugh Daddy's and helps everybody else's business, that we all maintain some degree of semblance. So I do think there's an ultimate return to the town and to our overall economy of the town to follow these guidelines. So I don't agree with you in the sense that, no, I don't think it's going to give you penny for penny profit on it, but there is value in doing this for the town's sake and the respect to the other businesses that go into this.
Thank you. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen?
One thing that went back to a point that Tammy was talking about, the HRSD though, in the interim, and maybe we can check this out, but there may be a way to meter his water service during, if it goes as 2-year extension.
There is some way to do it, because they do it
Because you do it,
in Surrey.
do it for you.
Yeah.
And that would address the HRSD and the town sewer issue in the interim, which is problematic in
Well,
status quo.
we do that at home. We have a well that we share among 3 houses. We each all have a meter on our well, and that's how we have an overall kilowatt thing, and we split it based on the water usage that we have at my house, my neighbor's house, and the next neighbor's house. We do it every year. Every December, I calculate it up for them, and And my neighbor pays X percent, and I pay X percent, and they pay X percent based on our usage.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
that's
the-
that's on the well side.
That's on the electrical meter though.
Well, we have a separate electrical meter so we can develop kilowatt hours for total usage out of the person's home. So we have a separate meter that we run kilowatts. But I have a meter that talks about how many gallons are consumed at my house and how many gallons are consumed at their house. And we use that as a percentage and we break it up. We just don't split it in thirds. We split it up on usage.
Right.
So we all have a, as it comes off there, we all have a meter to each of our properties. So it can be metered and we do it. I mean, I had to replace my meter because it just broke 2 years ago. So I had to replace it in order to make sure my neighbors aren't paying my share.
Well, in the interim, that would seem to be a solution to the water sewer issue and HRSD, the sewer HRSD issue.
As long as they're willing to accept that reading, assuming they would.
I'd have to reach out to HRSD and verify. Just to clarify Mr. Bryan's motion, it would be approval of the Planning Commission waiver allowing gravel in the ECO, and then a favorable recommendation of the waiver of parking and loading with the 2-year timeframe for the connection. Town staff is a bit concerned with the two-year time limit that would exceed the projected completion of the bridge, and we do forecast that that cost would increase once you have two-way traffic right there in front of Red Point. So maybe we would suggest amending the motion within connecting to town water prior to the completion of the Cypress Creek Bridge project. That way, that would allow the applicants that additional extension of time, but also keep them within that lane closure where there is less traffic in that area.
I would say there's nothing that keeps them from doing it before the price goes up.
On or before.
Or before.
And I don't think any of us want to seem negative about a commercial business. Y'all do a good job. You've brought in a lot of people. People in town and elsewhere enjoy coming. We don't want to seem that we're unfriendly to that. But, yeah.
And I don't want to perceive that I'm being unfriendly to you. I'm bringing up the issues that we deal with, and these are the things that we talk about, and this is our responsibility to talk about
I
these
fully,
issues.
fully understand. Got to have rules and follow them.
So, Mr. Bryan, Ms. Clary captured your motion correctly.
Yeah, so with the condition that we extend it to a period of time just prior to the bridge reopening.
That's a
Well,
difficult time to measure.
that's undetermined.
That's what I'm getting at. I was trying to understand how could we determine that?
That's a moving target that
Yes.
can hit.
Well, other than y'all doing your due diligence to see where they are in construction and being able to, if they project that it's going to be done in 6 weeks, y'all got 6 weeks.
But Mr. Yoko his point was well taken, that nothing stops them. I mean, if you give them 2 years, nothing stops them from doing it sooner if they think from an economic standpoint it will be less costly to them.
Right.
But
Staff is concerned that they might come back and ask for an additional extension because at that point it is more
They
costly.
can ask for an additional extension all they want to. It doesn't mean they get one. Anybody can ask for anything. Y'all need to make a decision about what you want to do. And I don't think giving them a moving target as to an unknown date makes very much sense. Because we don't know when that bridge is going to be finished.
The likelihood of business picking up before the bridge finish, particularly going into an election year, election cycle, is not high. I think if we're going to do this, we need to give them a date, a concrete date. This is your date.
Do we know when the current waiver expires?
It's expired.
Okay. We haven't reapproved anything yet.
No, sir.
I believe Mr. Bryan originally said 2 years.
And not being able to define a moving target, I stick to the 2 years. The
Okay.
motion with the 2 years.
Okay.
Do y'all have real quick, does the town have a physical year? January 1, July 1, July 1?
July.
July.
Would it make sense to keep it within the fiscal year of the town? Or does it make no difference?
That
Doesn't
basically
make
that has to do with money, nothing else.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So Mr. Bryan has a motion. Is there a second?
And this is a recommendation to town council, is that correct?
It is approval of the Planning Commission waiver to allow gravel in the entrance corridor, and then it would also be a favorable recommendation for a waiver of parking and loading to allow a gravel parking area and vehicle movement area, provided that they connect to the town water within 2 years.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Clary, would you call for the question, please?
Dr. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
No.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Yoko?
Yes.
And Chairwoman Hillegas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you.
Next item is site plan and ECO review, 204 Wimbledon Lane, Liberty Live Church. We have a staff report.
Yes, thank you. The applicant is seeking site plan approval. This would be to erect an approximately 23,000 square foot building. This would be for the use of a church. It will have approximately 500 seats, 206 parking spaces, 8 handicap. The detached sign will comply with the Smithfield zoning ordinance, and it will feature Liberty Live Church with brick structural features. The rear of the structure, which is located within the ECO, will feature tan EIFS PVC trim and a concrete sill on top of red brick veneer. The site will be landscaped, featuring 52 canopy understory and buffer trees, 36 interior parking lot plantings, and 224 various shrubs throughout the property. We do recommend that approval of the site plan and the ECO is contingent on the applicants providing a landscaping and construction bonds prior to construction, along with their water connection and availability fees. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have an applicant here to comment on this? Applicant is not with us. Ladies and gentlemen, what's your pleasure on this item?
A couple of questions for Ms. Clary, real quick, if I may. Is this an application in front of us without any special use permit or any waivers of any sort? This is a strictly fits our book and bill?
Yes, that is correct. It does fall under the entrance corridor only because the back half of the property is within that 500 feet, but you can tell by the landscaping plan that it will be landscaped and include that buffer area.
I don't believe I've seen one of these in a while.
Thank you, sir.
And there's no wetland intrusion?
No, sir, they are outside of the 100-foot RPA.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. With that, I would move that we approve this as presented with staff recommendations.
So motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve as presented. Ms. Clary, call for the question, please.
Mr. Bryan?
Yes.
Mr. Pack?
Yes.
Dr. Pope?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Yoko?
Yes.
And Chairwoman Hillegas?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is our discussion item about the entrance corridor overlay guidelines. Ms. Clary, what say you?
Yes, thank you. We have provided staff comments throughout the document. We really want to reach out to Planning Commission on this first draft and see if there's any comments that you disagree with, any comments that you feel are missing. I believe it's the 4th tab is the map that was created in-house by Mark Cluck, and we are suggesting that actually replaces the map that the consultants had used, featuring that light blue and tan outline of the property. We really felt as though the aerial imagery really captured the ECO and the town boundaries more visually appealing to people, so we did include that as a suggestion. We also have the tab of just the draft guidelines without any comments. So if there's anything that stood out to the planning commissioners or any additional comments, we'd be happy to take note of those. Thank you.
Yeah, a really nice job on this map, Mark. It's a great improvement. Appreciate you doing that. I don't necessarily want to go through this line by line, but if you all have comments, please get them to staff. They really just want to make sure they're on the right track and everybody kind of agrees with where they're headed with these general comments about what you feel about the look and the tenor of this document, how you want it to feel. I don't think anybody's turned in their comments yet, but please do so as soon as possible. Are we gonna have the consultant go through things with us at the next meeting, or do we have that scheduled yet?
Yes, so right now the plan is, this is the first draft, so we would like to provide them with as many comments as possible. And then that way, once they address those comments, we can have the consultants come back, have a public hearing with a solid second draft of the document before Planning Commission, before we then bring it before Town Council with that third final draft. Again, that RFP allows us three drafts of this document.
When would you like to do the public hearing?
As it stands right now, we're looking more at, I believe, October. It depends on how long it will take the consultants to address our comments,
Okay.
and so
So October, November.
we're still kind of in limbo. We don't want to rush it where they don't have time to
Right,
address
I'd rather
it.
have a good document than a
Yes.
quick document. Yeah,
Yes.
agreed. All right, ladies
So,
and gentlemen, anything?
I'm sorry, so we should email you our comments.
That's fine. You can
Okay.
discuss them tonight. You can
Unless
email
you have
them.
major points you want to
Mhm.
discuss tonight. I mean, I don't want to, edit by committee, page by page.
Right.
That's tedious.
I only have two comments reading it through. One was they suggested a specific light in here. We've discussed that before, and Mr. Riddick, you've indicated that we did not want to specify specific light poles or lighting apparati.
Well, there's a program that VEPCO has that the town took advantage of for lighting in like parking lots here. And they have lights that you can choose from. And so, I don't think we would want, and I expect that will change from time to time. And so I don't know that, does that make any sense, Tammy, to specify?
Their suggestion is to use dark sky approved
Well,
architectural
well, dark-
lighting.
Dark sky, you understand that? right?
No.
Okay.
I thought
It's
it was
to
a brand
prevent
name.
light
No,
pollution.
that's, no. If it's just dark sky, what that means is the fixtures are designed in such a way that they just project down and not out, and so that you don't get a lot of light. It minimizes light pollution.
Well, it's capitalized, which makes me think it's a name brand versus
Okay.
a concept.
No, that's a type of, a characteristic to outdoor lighting.
And maybe if that was an issue, maybe that needs to be explained in the document.
Yeah, it reads, Dark Sky International Parking Lot Lighting. Dark Sky International could certainly
Yeah.
be
Yeah,
Right.
the
That's what
perceived as company.
I
Yeah.
don't think that's what's intended. Dark sky is what most of the localities specify because they're trying to minimize light pollution.
yeah.
That's fine. And then the only other thing on page 61, we talked about sign bases. We really haven't discussed a whole lot about signs, but there was some comment, if I paraphrase it, remember from my reading, but we suggested that some of it alluded to the fact that they weren't masonry-based. I don't know if we've gotten so far in our sign ordinance to suggest that we prefer masonry-based versus things like 7-Eleven or McDonald's things, but we didn't really talk about that in our sign ordinance, but masonry-based signs certainly seems like the way to go. When you look at Hair Stop and these others, and, I don't know, I thought,
But we're also starting to allow some composite materials, like we just allowed
Like
one
we did
with
last month.
Main Street
well,
Baptist Church.
it was a concrete base with a applique over it, but.
Yeah,
But I don't know, I think masonry-based signs should be strongly encouraged in our ECO guidelines as opposed to these, I'll say skyscraper signs and everything else. But the examples given on page 61, I think our sign ordinance should really specify a lot of masonry-based signs, and especially if we have a height restriction of 15 or 21 feet in there. A strong masonry-based sign would make a lot of sense to really encourage in the ECO guidelines, or even across the town in general.
Well, but then look on page 65. The town is welcome to Smithfield sign.
Yeah.
Right, are you gonna just, that's very attractive. Are you gonna just say, if somebody came in and came up with an idea and they thought it was more appropriate, I mean,
No, I'm not going to say no to that.
Yeah.
But if I had a preference, I prefer the other,
Right.
especially for a business, but.
so I mean,
But then we also have cuter signs like, on Cure and Parlor, the things that hang down that are perpendicular to the buildings. Things like the Chili Hill Market, those type of signs for smaller business. I mean, I see monument signs as something like subdivision, town bank, things like that, where smaller businesses wouldn't need something that large. You know what I'm saying?
The sign section does need to be reworked. This was drafted before we approved the new sign ordinance. And so they do need to go back and do some edits on this particular section.
While we're mentioning that sign ordinance, are we fixing definitions of opaque,
Yes, we're-
translucent, transparent?
We are working on it.
Okay.
Mark has done research on international sign definitions that our main focus at that point in time was really getting those personal expression signs out of the right of way.
Understood.
We are trying to rehash it and make sure that it works across the board
I-
on the list.
Signs to me are the most touchy subject you ever get into with this because what you need and want in a grocery store is not applicable to other applications and
Right.
Well,
Don't
and
want that
franchises
certainty.
and that type of thing.
it,
Yeah.
amen. And like I said, I have watched franchises not go places because they can't use their trademark sign. And fine, we will not come to your town because we can't use our colors
Which is
and
a
our
real
signs.
shame.
Which is, so.
And we have the special sign exception for that particular instance, so we do tell applicants, especially in this position, you know, we understand that you're struggling to meet our ordinance. We do have this mechanism that staff will support your application as well.
Right, yeah, I was gonna say, because like the cupcake guys,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anything else?
Just two comments.
Yes, sir.
Small comments, I think. On page 39, I was looking at the photo on page 39. Just using it as an example of layering with ground cover, short to medium height shrubs, that type of thing. Yeah, I think a better photo can be taken here. I mean, the shrubs that you're trying to highlight, they're in the shadows. I think a different time of the day or something where the sun is shining on them. I think that'll be a better photo.
We don't know if it's an export issue that we're dealing with, but all of the images do seem to be pixelated, so we do need clearer images.
Okay. And
I know, just to follow up on that, Ms. Bryan, excuse me, Ms. Winslow may have some good photos from where they did was it Blooming USA or whatever award that we got? Some pictures of downtown landscaping in particular.
Okay, thank you.
And second comment is page 88. You're deleting definitions, and a couple of them caught my attention. I was curious as to why. Accessory dwelling, is that being deleted from the definitions?
So some of the definitions we already define in our zoning ordinance, and so that's where we're trying to find a balance where first of all, they most certainly align, but there's not going to be a difference and an overlap, and we don't want to have, you have to go to the zoning ordinance to find that definition, and you have to go to the guidelines to find that definition, so we try to make sure that all of them were together and simplified, and the accessory dwelling unit in particular It's a very tedious process that they have to go through in order to get one. If you remember on Riverside Drive, it's a special use permit. We have to have affidavits. We have to, there's a whole list. And it's not easy. And so we wanted that kind of removed because we don't really talk about accessory dwelling units throughout the guidelines, but it is located within our zoning ordinance. And we thought there might be some confusion there if we had it as a definition in the guidelines, but then the requirements are actually in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, good. This other one is mobile food vendors. Why would we delete that?
So right now, we're still in the process of addressing what to do with those peddlers. And so we didn't want to include any sort of definition while we're still working through that. And we just don't know what that looks like right now, and we didn't want to provide the wrong information on this document while we're still drafting that language and drafting the requirements for those.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody's still working through this. Anything else?
No, I'm very pleased with it. I think it's a great document.
Just so you all know, I, have this Board of Historic and Architectural Review gig next Tuesday as well. We are also going through the Historic District Design Guidelines at the same time, so they are available out there on our agenda, with our agenda package. If you'd like to look at those in conjunction with this, it's a good time to, as we dovetail these things together, we would welcome your comments there as well. Anything else on this item? Please get your comments to Tammy. You want to give them a deadline?
Do we think by the 1st of September?
How do you feel about that?
You say 1st of September?
1st of September?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, excellent.
That's only like 15 days, just so everybody knows. The 1st of
Right.
September seems very far away. It's like 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, you've already had it for months, so.
I'm not mad about that.
Okay.
I'm just reminding everybody the 1st of September sounds like far away.
You gotta
It's
pick a
not.
day.
It is not.
Gotta pick a day. That's the day. All right.
And again, if you need extra time, if you just let me know, we'd be more than happy to wait. We really want quality comments this first round.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is approval of the July 9th meeting minutes.
Yes, and I've read them and recommend they be approved as presented.
So moved.
Pack and Pope.
Pack and Pope. P squared. All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Can we do this? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else for the good of the cause?
Just one question. Any updates on the Starbucks application in front of the Hampton Inn?
We have not received, in front of the DMV,
No, not the DMV, the one in front of Hampton Inn, the Starbucks that's proposed, that's
we have
a
not
concept?
received an updated site plan for
Okay.
that area.
Okay.
They're still in site development.
Anything else?
On that same note, what about the property behind the Royal Farms that we've had discussions with the developer at one point?
We are waiting on an updated TIA memo for that project in order to include it in the application.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else? We adjourn. Thank you for your time and attention.